Well, hello and good evening, everybody. Welcome back to the Hockey Writers Live. You have reached episode 6 of our new adventure. I am your host, Mark Scheig, and I know exactly why you all are tuning into us tonight. Um, you all need a break from the election. I know you've probably watched it since yesterday. You've been probably waiting like me to find out what exactly is going to happen. So I think maybe for this next hour, it's still not going to be decided. So let's give you all a hockey fix. So we really appreciate you joining in tonight. And, been trying to think about a name for this segment. The first segment, the last few weeks, we have a special guest and we go generally around 30 minutes, the first half of the show. And with this guest tonight, which is somebody I've gotten to know over the last couple of years in Columbus, we're really honored to have him. We're going to debut a new name for this segment. It's actually going to be called 30 Good Minutes. And so tonight we're going to spend 30 good minutes with one of the best writers out there. And this is Brian Hedger of the Columbus Dispatch. He is one of the Columbus Blue Jackets beat writers. Brian, welcome to the Hockey Writers Live.
Thank you, Mark. Did you say it was an election? I don't know.
Wait, what? Huh?
There's
What?
something going on in America. I don't know what's going
Hmm.
on with that, but
Well, yeah, there's no NHL hockey being played in America.
uh, right, right.
Yes.
Well, yet, hopefully.
Hopefully soon. Hopefully soon. But
Correct. Hey, listen, thank you for having me on. I appreciate it.
yeah.
This is a big honor for me as well to join you here. And it's always fun to talk Blue Jackets hockey, any kind of hockey, but especially Blue Jackets, right? You and I,
Yes.
make that our primary focus. And we happen to
Mhm.
have some news today, right?
We have some news today, and big news that I don't think anybody saw coming, just randomly kind of hit us. And let's start there. Gustav Nyquist, 5 to 6 month recovery time with a torn labrum, ouch, in his left shoulder. Just what is your initial reaction when you saw that news, Brian?
Well, also, if you read Yarmo's quote about it that they sent out, there was also a cyst
Yeah.
involved in
Ugh.
there that they kind of got developed in there as well, which really started impeding, I think, motion and pain as well,
Mm-hmm.
tolerance. So it
Yep.
had to be addressed. He's 31 years old. A lot of these guys, there's wear and tear in a lot of these guys. With me, I mean, it was interesting. I got a little bit of a heads up about, a couple minutes beforehand, just, hey, something's coming. And boom, there's Gus is out for 5 to 6 months. Now,
Yep.
as I was scrambling to write my story as fast as humanly possible,
Yep.
I was also starting to think, okay, what does this mean for the timing, right? So like we have no idea when the NHL season is even going to start for the 21
That's
season at
it.
this point. So I mean, you even heard rumblings. I think there was even rumblings the other day about how it's already been moved back from December 1st to January 1st, and
January.
now there's rumblings that potentially it might go back to even to February because isn't the AHL? I think the AHL starting in February and the
February
OHL
5th, I want to say, yeah.
same with the OHL. So like
Mm-hmm.
it would kind of make sense that maybe and if the NHL is going to push back, it might go back there. Let's just say hypothetically, let's go there. That's already how many months out is that from now? We're in November. That's December, January. That's
January,
3 months
February.
right
It's
there.
half your time. Yep.
It's so you might miss 2 months of the season rather than like the whole season. So I guess that's one way to look at it.
Yep.
Another way you could potentially look at that though is this a signal in a way, unintentionally by the Blue Jackets to say, is there going to be a season? You know what I mean? Or how long is this delay going to actually happen?
Great
And
question.
and maybe it's like a question of how I don't know. I think it might be a measure of how of the uncertainty. I guess is a good word for what they might feel of the pending season. So if they feel like it's really uncertain as to like when they're going to get something hammered out, they might have just said, you know what, you got this issue. Let's take care of this right now. And
Mm-hmm.
then maybe we get you back halfway through the season, or or sooner, even if depending on when the season starts. So, I don't
Yep.
know. I think it's very interesting, and what were your takeaways from it as
Hmm.
well?
The first thing that came to my mind, isn't that the same injury that Tyler Sagan just had?
I think so. I think you're right.
Like five
And
is also 5 months out. You mentioned it earlier, 31 years old,
yep,
a major surgery. how's he going to do when he comes back and he's ready?
Right.
And
Exactly.
that's the thing that I'm going to look for. And then the other thing that kind of jumped out is, okay, there was already kind of a in the forward ranks a little bit of a crowd because of the new signings and some of the younger players that are ready to try and take the next step. So now, do you go out and get a scoring winger
Yep.
because top six, or is the solution already on the team? Liam Foodie, Eric Robinson. There's a couple guys that you could probably
Alex
try in that slot. I'm
Texier.
not sure, but
Right.
that just opens up a whole new can of worm of questions. And obviously, when you have that kind of injury, you have to do what you have to do and get it taken care of. But it does open opportunity, and heck, the top six forward thing, even before the Nyquist injury, there was always that speculation where the Blue Jackets waiting for their opportunity to take advantage of like Tampa Bay's cap situation or something else, because there was a clear, in my opinion, spot on the left wing top line.
Yep.
Now, back to you. Do you feel like that this injury gives them even more pressure to have to fill that role in the top six, or do they keep it internal?
That's a great question. And in a way, it really, to me, it boils down to something I ended up writing in my article today.
Hmm.
Was at near the end of it, basically is, guess who's still unsigned, right? It's
Yeah.
still Pierre-Luc Dubois, and it is still Vladislav Gavrikov.
Gavrikov.
And so those two guys together, I mean, I think we all kind of know where that's going. They're probably going to sign for somewhere combined between $7 and $8 million each, and they have like $12 million to play with right now. So that would only leave you like $4 million to go out and sign somebody.
Yep.
But you don't know right now. So like, what if you like? And there's a couple names that interest me as far as them not signing yet. And they both play left wing. One of them is Mike Hoffman, who has been mentioned in several reports as potentially, the Jackets having interest there. And the other one is Michael Granlund, who who's shown, he's only 26 years old, I think, and he's shown 26 or 27, and he has shown in his career thus far that he is not as good at center as he is at left wing.
Right.
He was actually really good in Minnesota playing left wing. And there's been reports from some Finnish writers who have basically put two and two together and said, well, if Koivu is signing with Columbus, you can pretty much expect Granlund to sign in Columbus as well. But he's not, because they don't know what their cap number is. Like, everything is frozen right now by Dubois and Gavrikov. And this doesn't change any of that unless they want to use LTIR, long-term injury reserve or something, which potentially you could theoretically use. But it doesn't do anything to help that situation. And anything, it makes it kind of worse, because you start thinking, well, they got to add somebody now for those first 2 months, potentially. Like, wouldn't you rather have a veteran who's proven, like Granlund, who's had a 60-point season or 50-point season before, and throw him in there and see if he can give you something to fill in for Gus, those first 2 months, or do you go internally? And I mean, this is a team that is not afraid to go internal. We've seen that, obviously, especially with their goaltenders last year. But at the same time, I think when you're looking at it from an external standpoint, like you and I think we would both probably agree, if you could sign somebody, it's probably a pretty good idea at this point.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%, especially if it fits the mold. Like, two sides of the story, right? So free agency, there's a reason why some guys are out there still. Mike Hoffman wants a lot of money. I'm just not sure that Columbus is willing to give him the kind of money he's looking for yet, especially knowing that the two are still unsigned.
In the middle
Granlund, same thing. He can get a boatload of money if he wanted to,
right,
based on recent production or whatever you want to look at it. I just think that with the crowd, though, I mean, Liam Foodie, listen, in that playoff series, especially against Toronto, he didn't look out of place.
No, he's more of a right wing Noah, isn't he?
He is. And you just wonder, can Oliver Bjorkstrand play the offside, or
right?
I mean, what are their
about Cam? Like I've thought that as well.
Yep.
Like I've had that same exact thought, Mark, about both of those guys, Bjorkstrand, especially Bjorkstrand, because he's got that great shot. And you theoretically would think if you've got a great right hand shot and it's really accurate, what is stopping you from going to the left wing circle and just pounding that sucker from there? Like that's what Panarin. That's what made Panarin famous before he got to Columbus. Like that's what he did in Chicago. He played the left wing with the off wing right hand shot, and got a bunch of passes from Patrick Kane, and he banged them home. Like I could see Bjorkstrand doing that, but it's up to him whether he wants to make that switch. And I think the same thing could be same for Cam, another right hand shot who plays the right hand side. But you're right. Like, are they willing to move somebody over so that Foudy plays the right side, or one of the other guy, and we'll probably get to him in a little bit, I'm guessing, is Grigorenko.
Yeah.
Right.
That's
so
it.
I keep forgetting to talk about him. I just wrote about him this past week, but I keep forgetting to talk about him. I mean, he had some pretty outstanding numbers in the KHL, and I was talking to him, and I said, and he basically said, all these guys say the same thing. I'll play anywhere. I just want to play, blah, blah, blah. He likes to play the right-hand side with a left-hand shot. You can tell. Like, he's got a left-hand shot. He's a playmaker. He wants to drag that puck to the middle and take shots from the right-hand wing. But where are you going to put him right now, right? Does he go into that third line? Like, where do you put Bemstrom then?
I was actually just going to ask you back about Bemstrom. Like, the talent is certainly there. You see the upside. He's got to get stronger. He still needs to get used to the league a little bit, but it seemed like that him going overseas and getting some playing time in certainly hasn't hurt him.
No.
What kind of expectations can we have on Bemstrom next year? And the other thing that I'm thinking about, especially with roster construction, when you have so many forwards, I know with Gus being out, it might make it a little bit easier, but who's waivers exempt? Bemstrom is, Foudy is. Does Bemstrom even start on the opening roster because he's waivers exempt?
Well, that's a good point. And then you start talking about he's already playing in Finland right now.
Right.
So do you bring him back right away, or do you just let him finish the season in Finland and say, hey, let's just call this a development year? And then when you're done, since that'll end before the Jackets season, even theirs one might even end before the Jackets are even a month or two into theirs.
Yeah.
Then maybe he's a reinforcement at the end, because you never know if there's injuries and stuff. I don't know. I've done a lot of thinking about him, and he is an interesting one from another aspect too. I feel like Bemstrom was starting to get it in the smaller ice surface, North American hockey, more direct lines to the net, all the stuff you want to see a guy get.
Yes.
I feel like he was getting that right before COVID hit, right before the pandemic pause, because he had I think it was 10 points or something in about 2.5 weeks. I mean, he was really on fire. If you go back and look at his production offensively, I think he was playing really well. And then he came back for the postseason, and I think he struggled again. I mean, it wasn't clicking. He kind of looked like a guy who had been sitting out for a long time. And then he goes back over to Finland now on the bigger ice surface, where he's clearly more comfortable, and he's tearing it up. He started, I don't know what he's doing exactly right now, but he was off to a really hot start, obviously.
Yep.
So what is he, and who is he? And you know what I mean? Like, where's he at on the development curve for the Blue Jackets needs right now, in comparison to Grigorenko, and to how he's going to come over, in comparison to Foudy and Texier, and like you mentioned the backlog, right? Excuse me. Where's he at in that? And I think that's a very interesting question to find out. And when will they bring him back? Will it be for training camp? Will that be determined by when the season actually is going to be starting? That kind of. I think there's a lot of interesting.
Many questions. That's it. Yeah. So it's about 8:15. So if you're just joining in here, this is the Hockey Writers Live. It's episode 6. I am your host, Mark Scheig, and this week we are spending 30 good minutes with Columbus Blue Jackets beat writer Brian Hedger from the Columbus Dispatch. So Brian, kind of jumping back here to other players that are new and are going to fit into the roster. The centers. I mean, that's obviously the huge difference that we're going to see with assuming Dubois signs. Obviously he'll sign at some point. But now Max Domi, Miko Koivu are your 2 and 3 centers. That allows Boone Jenner to go back to the left side. Like, I feel like that's a maybe not underrated, but it's kind of going a little under the radar because players are going into better spots. What did you think of the signings, and what can we expect to see from the centers?
Well, that's good. That's another interesting one because Jenner could still theoretically play center at some point, if you needed him to, either injury fill in position, spot, or, I thought maybe he might slot down to the 4C, and he could still forecheck down there, not quite as well as on the wing. But to me, it's kind of a toss up with Boone about, do you want him like Yarmo clearly sees him as a winger who goes down and he's just a dominating forechecking force, and you can see that because he is really physical. But I look at it and I say, I think there's a toss up here because he's also really good in the faceoff circle, and they don't have a whole lot of those guys. Now, I guess you could theoretically have him take faceoffs and play the wing, but that's not usually how it works. If you have a guy playing center, you're usually going to have him take the faceoffs, and then Jenner would be like a cherry on top of the cupcake or whatever, who comes in and wins faceoffs when the guy gets kicked out. But I look at him like, well, who else wins 50% of their faceoffs or more in this team? It's not Dubois, it's probably not Domi, he's your fit. It's not Foligno. It's not Riley Nash all the time. So like, he's your only 50 plus faceoff guy at this point. And so you're going to move that guy to the wing. I think that's interesting with that part. But I also see, you put a good center like a Koivu. Oh, you know what? I'm missing Koivu. Another guy I'm forgetting. Koivu will win you more than 50% of the faceoffs as well. He's a grizzled veteran. The legs might not all be there like they used to be, but I guarantee you the faceoffs will be just fine with Mike Koivu. So Yarmo laid it out, right? So he looks at it and says, I think in his mind, his main forechecking line is Foligno, Koivu, and Jenner. I think those are the things that I think he sees them as like a third line. We may see John Tortorella have them in the fourth potentially. It depends on skating and scoring and all that kind of stuff. But that's just a very interesting situation with the centers down the middle. And I do think, now getting back to that, they did add Koivu, like we just said. I thought that was a good add. I've been a little skeptical because he did play fourth line with Minnesota, and he did struggle a bit coming off the knee injury, which is to be expected. He's 37 years old, and he had the knee injury at 36. That's not easy to bounce back for, even for a professional athlete who's in tip-top shape like him.
That's it. Yeah.
But I do think that was overall a good ad. I really love the Max Domi addition, to be honest with you. I think he's
gonna be good.
I feel like just an even fiery personality type of guy. I think that it's either going to be like oil and water with Torts, or it's going to be like just perfect. Like they're going to be at each other's throats in a good way. I feel like that they could drive each other a little bit. That I thought that was a good one, and they needed a center for that second line. It's hard to give up Anderson because he is such a unicorn. I call him because there's just not many guys like that out there in the NHL with that size, speed, hands, skill, all that. When he puts it together, he's a freaking unicorn. Like, he really is. It's hard to give that up, but they did win. If you remember this last season, they won a lot of games without him. When he got injured, they won most of their games, and they needed a center. So I thought that was a pretty good move on Yarmo's part, especially to get him signed. Even if it's only a 2-year deal, I think that was a good move on Yarmo's part.
Good value, 2 years, get each side a chance to know each other, and just wait for the first fight at Nationwide Arena, especially when he drops those gloves and he gets 20,000 screaming fans on his side.
Yep.
That's going to be a loud building.
They've always loved them some fighters at Nationwide Arena, haven't they?
Yeah, just a little bit. they'll love him. They'll love Max for that, but not just a fighter. He can play. He's got 70-point season under his belt. So
absolutely, yeah. And I think he's motivated too, right?
Absolutely, got a lot to prove.
Yeah, definitely.
So I'll throw one more Blue Jackets question at you. Have you recovered from the Igor Chinikov pick yet?
You must have missed our pre-show discussion about Chinakhov. Actually, it was fantastic. Just about how much I enjoyed the look on Yarmo's face as he made the pick, and then how much I enjoyed it even more after he made the pick, and kept looking into the camera as if to say, ha ha ha, none of you idiots know what I just did here, but I know how good this guy is, blah, blah, blah. Like, that was the look that was on his face, and I thought it was fantastic, and I enjoyed every second of it. And what really makes it is, like, if Yarmo didn't have a track record of finding really good players, like, in the industry, a lot of people consider him a super scout, even though they bang on his picks all the time because he goes off the map and he goes off the charts and stuff. The fact of the matter is, when you look at his record, he hits a lot of doubles, a lot of triples, and some home runs here and there. And so you can't really knock him. Like, I think everyone wants to knock him because they don't know who he's picking, and they're just waiting for that one where he just completely blows it, right? And they're gonna be like, "Oh, he just totally wasted a pick." But it almost never happens. And it's not just him. That's what people have realized. He put together a really good scouting staff, and he lets them do the work. And then he obviously has his own input in there. So he's not going to make a pick he doesn't want to make. But it's not all Yarmo either. This is the whole thing. And so I thought that was hilarious from that aspect, because it sent all the draftniks scrambling for information on Igor Sokoloff. And, listen, Chinakhov is off to a great start in the KHL. I mean, there's just no doubt about it. And if you watch some of the goals he scored, you see the shot right away.
Definitely. Yeah.
Oh, I mean, some of those shots are just like, whoa, this guy can really fire the puck, and he knows where he's putting it, and he knows how to beat goalies. So the big thing with the Russians is getting them over here, right?
Yeah.
Like Vincent, making them feel comfortable, making them feel realizing that they can come over here, and they're not going to, I mean, it's a different country. It's thousands of miles away. They're in America, it's a whole new culture and all that kind of stuff. But they've got 3 of them lined up at forward, right? They got Chinakhov being the latest, but it starts with Marchenko in that second round of 2018. And then they go with Voronkov in the 4th round in 2019. And he's doing well. He's a big 6'4" center. And now they add Chinakhov. So you have 3 forwards who are all young, all playing in the KHL at the top level in Russia, and all having various levels of success up there.
Yeah.
And then we have to mention the goalie, Daniil Tarasov, who is also getting some time in the KHL, and he's playing really well too. So they're going to have some real Russian influence if they can get all these guys, to come over this way. What did you think about the Chinakhov pick?
The only thing that I thought about after, and I had to admit, I hadn't heard of him, but the Hockey Writers did have a draft profile on him, so I immediately got to read that.
Yeah, we were talking about that, by the way, about how it went up there, and everyone's like, "Oh my God, we're scrambling
here." But
yes.
I thought that Yarmo admitted that they've been following him for a while now. The only question that I would have would be, why didn't they take him last year when he was draft eligible last year?
Correct.
He was they
only had 3 picks. They only had 3 picks.
Right. He went undrafted, so he could have been had 6th or 7th round. I know they
got Tyler Angle, right? Isn't that who they got
from Windsor? Yes, from Tyler Angle.
7th round, right?
Mm-hmm. So they knew of him. And it just makes me wonder, for a reader, obviously you see the skills, so we don't want to judge it. We want to give this a chance to play out. But if they could have gotten him last year in the 7th round, why didn't they do it then? That would be the one thing that I would want to know. But then moving forward, the whole Russian connection, the whole I think even there's a little Artemi Panarin in there. You don't want to throw around a name like that, but the way you can shoot the puck, like you said.
Yes.
I mean, it's just, he can finish. And if there's something that the Columbus Blue Jackets need to do, especially in future seasons, they got to finish.
Yes.
And, it'll be a few years before they come over, but, we'll see.
You could say that about you could say that about Marchenko too.
Yeah.
He's
a wonderful start.
He's another finisher as well. And you're right. You're 100% right. They need finishers. And that's why they need Bemstrom to come on and be the guy he is when he's in Europe. They need him to be a finisher as well.
Absolutely. And it's going to be exciting to see their development. I think they're 1 year apart in being able to come over. I know Chinakhov is debating maybe after a season about a contract. We'll see where that goes, but um, it's going to be a lot of fun to see. We see what they saw in them, and what I can't wait for will be other teams asking why wasn't this player available on the board, and then all the backlash that goes along with that if it pans out for them.
Right. I thought one thing that was interesting, because in bringing up the draft history of Jarmo Kekalainen,
Mm-hmm.
is that he's a guy who has had enough success, and he's been around long enough in picking, especially first round picks, to where he can immediately, and he did this. He can think back and say, have I ever drafted a guy like this before, who was an overager that everybody wrote off for a whole draft, and then we got him high in the next round and he panned out? And the answer is yes, he has. And it was David Perron in St. Louis. And he even mentioned that and said, hey, I think David Perron's career has turned out pretty well. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, that's not to say Igor Chinakhov is going to become David Perron or whatever, but it's nice to be able to look at the past and see examples of something like this working, is all that is. And you can do that. Another one I thought was interesting about the draft, I know we want to move on.
Mm-hmm.
The Jackets had an interesting relationship with another Igor from Russia. It was Igor Sokoloff, who ended up playing. He was like the second or third leading scorer last season with
Cape Breton. Cape Breton.
Cape Breton. It was Cape Breton, that team that Dubois played for at some point.
Yeah, correct.
But they had a relationship with him because going back to prospect camps, they actually invited him twice as a free agent to Traverse City. And the first year he didn't play very much, and then last year he did play a lot. And he's a really kind of an awkward skater because he's so big and he's kind of heavy, but he gets to where he needs to be, and he's got finish too. And he actually tied with Texier for the lead in the Traverse City Prospects Camp goals for the Blue Jackets team. Then he came into camp and he was pretty good, and they didn't sign him. And so there was, to me, it's like, it's interesting. I almost guarantee it's the skating, why they didn't sign him. But he goes in the second round, last puck of the second round, to the Ottawa Senators. And I've wondered if the Senators didn't take them, and if he was there for the Jackets, I almost wondered if they take him at that point, because I don't see their list, obviously. But I would be interested to see if they would have grabbed him if he had been there.
Yeah, especially the fact of what he proved with the extra playing time. It would have been very interesting to see. So we're coming up on 8:30. We got, for those that have followed Brian for a long time, he's been in various places, Columbus Dispatch. He's worked for the Blue Jackets directly. He's worked for NHL.com. I believe he even spent some time with the Athletic several years ago covering a different team, the Chicago Blackhawks. While he's here, we have to give him a Blackhawks question because, there's no shortage of storylines there either.
Nope.
So, Brian, taking a look from the outside, you've covered their championships, what the Big Four is all about. Like, what do you make of their situation? Are these Blackhawks truly in a rebuild? And could you ever see a situation where any of the Big Four, Jonathan Toews, Patrick Kane, Duncan Keith, Brent Seabrook, get traded at all?
Well, we'll start with what was the first one? Just kind of where they are.
Are they in a rebuild?
Yeah. It's interesting. My last year there before for NHL.com and the Athletic, and I was helping out with Sun Times. I was freelancing basically for a lot of places.
Yeah.
The last season there was 16-17. Okay, and that was actually I think they finished first in the Central Division. I'm pretty sure they finished on top of it, and they got swept in the first round against the Nashville Predators. And that started this entire thing kind of spiraling out of control for the Chicago Blackhawks a little bit, because I feel personally they kind of overreacted to that. Like, ownership was not happy. The then, team president, John McDonough, was definitely not happy they got swept in the first round. It was not good PR. It wasn't all that stuff. So they go off and they basically fire Mike Kitchen and some other guys, from the coaching staff, and just have like a kind of a knee-jerk reaction, which really angered Joel Quenneville. I mean, just all these different things started to go just haywire. And they made that's what really started them making a lot of personnel changes, coaching staff, and then and also players, and ultimately Joel Quenneville got fired. It was just kind of crazy, one thing after another. So are they in a rebuild? I think you have to say yes, but at the same time, it's hard for me to say that, being a guy who covered 3 Stanley Cup championship teams with the core group that is still there on the ice. Those guys are aging, but it's very interesting. After that 16-17 season, remember we had a podcast right after they got swept from Game 4. It was in Nashville, and it was a bunch of it. It was cool. Scott and I, for The Athletic, decided to just have anybody on the beat come on in, and so we had Sun Times and Tribune, and we had like everybody there. And Mark Potash from the Sun Times basically brought up that he thought the window was closed for those players. He thought that was it. Like their championship window is over. And I was like, Mark, you're crazy. Like it's a little soon. These guys are still late 20s. Come on. They've won the cup 3 times. I mean, accidents happen. It's hockey, blah, blah, blah. And he's looking pretty right at this point. Like, if you really look at it right now, those guys are all plus 30, right? They're over 30 years old. Seabrook had a surgery, I believe, hip surgery or something. So we'll see if he can bounce back skating wise. But he was never fleet of foot to begin with. Right. And he's like plus 30 and making a lot of money. Duncan Keith is not what he was. He's still a heck of a defenseman. I mean, he's like upper 30s now. I think he's like 36 or 37 years old. Pretty sure he's up there, and he's still got 1 million miles left in his contract, but it only pays like $4 million a year against the cap. But you get to the other part of the question: would they ever trade any of those guys?
Yeah,
I think it's going to come down to can they, right? And I don't just mean the trade blocks that the players can put on. What I mean is. Can they trade him? Can you find a trade partner that's going to take Brent Seabrook and all that money? I don't particularly know. I mean, like the Jackets can't even move Brandon Dubinsky right now, and he's only got 1 year left on a 5.8, and he could be theoretically be an LTIR guy with a chronic wrist injury. So, Seabrook has 2 or 3 years left at 5 points, whatever. Excuse me. And, so I wonder that, but then there is also the no trade stuff with the big guys, right? And so then it starts coming down to which of those 3, and I'm going to say 3 big guys: Jonathan Toews, Patrick Kane, and Duncan Keith. Those 3 guys, I think not re-signing Corey Crawford is a much bigger deal than a lot of people realize with those guys, because he was the guy. Like he didn't win the first one, that was Antti Niemi. But he won the second 2, and you could make an argument that they might not win 1 or 2 of those if it wasn't for the way he played in net on the way there, and then definitely in the Stanley Cup final. He outplayed his opposition. So those guys feel a lot of indebtedness to him, and he's their buddy. He's their friend. So that's why you immediately saw when that happened. I mean, the Toews thing where Toews comes out and basically goes to Mark Lazarus of The Athletic and says, like, nobody told me we were in a rebuild, blah, 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 blah. That was the day after Corey Crawford signed with New Jersey.
Yep.
That's not by coincidence. That happened. He was angry. And Jonathan Toews is a mad guy. He gets a little bit of the anger going up there because he is Captain Serious for a reason. But he even said, look, he sees himself finishing as a Blackhawk. I think Patrick Kane sees himself finishing as a Blackhawk, although I think that he would be, personally, I feel like a guy like that
Buffalo
a little more apt to talk about maybe a trade to a team where he could help win a cup. He's not going to take a trade just anywhere to go and put up numbers. He could care less about that. He wants to win a cup, and so does Toews. But I think being in Chicago is kind of special to him. Duncan Keith is the guy. Like when I look at that group and I say, which one of those guys is likely to say, yeah, you know what, I'll take a trade to this team as long as I think I can win there. I think it's him. I mean, that dude loves to win, just like all the rest of them. And I don't think he particularly enjoys playing hockey just to play hockey. I don't think any of them do, but he particularly hates it. Like he hated like even scrimmages in training camp. Like, it used to just drive him crazy. Why am I out here playing with these guys who don't know what the heck they're doing? He said that to me one time, like with all these prospects and stuff. So I could see him being amenable if some team were to approach him and the Hawks and make it a fair deal or whatever. Some team that needs maybe a veteran presence on the back end. I personally think that he would be a perfect fit on the left point of like a second pairing for somebody like a team, say, that has a Zach Werenski and a Seth Jones potentially on top. I'm just throwing out some names there. I think he would be a perfect thing for them, because for a team like Columbus, because Columbus doesn't have anybody really who's won the cup. You need a few guys for experience who can also play, and he brings you both of those things. So I think that would be an interesting thing to pursue. I'm not saying I've heard anything like that, because I haven't, but it's just just kind of putting things together as armchair GM Brian Hedger here. That might be one that I might kick the tires on that one.
I had the one thing that I thought about from a defensive standpoint, kind of going away from the Blackhawks for a second. I know that there are reports out there that David Savard was on the block and then he got taken off, and that apparently this player was never in Columbus's view. But Alex Pietrangelo, before he signed in Vegas, I really wondered if he was going to come to Columbus, or at least Columbus would investigate it a little bit more. He's that guy. He's won a cup. He's an unrestricted free agent. Yarmo drafted him. Bradshaw was his first defensive coach. Like, all the connections were there. I really wondered if
he's already lived in St. Louis. No offense, St. Louis, but or Columbus. But I mean, those are Midwestern cities that aren't real sexy, and they're not Chicago, and they're not New York, and all the the glitz and the glamour. So he's already lived in a market like that, and knows how passionate that hockey fans can be in those markets. And Columbus, I think, is certainly in that category at this point after making the playoffs 4 years in a row. I thought that same thing too, Mark. That was one of the first things I thought about was they're going to take a run at Pietrangelo. But you're right, though. If they had done that, it would have taken a trade of Savard, I think, because just the money wise, you weren't going to fit his salary in there unless you traded somebody else out who's 5+. And so I thought, and Savard plays right, a point, and so does Pietrangelo. So I believe. So
that's right.
Yeah, so I wondered that too, but then the more time went on, it became clear he was going to probably Vegas.
It was the only thing at that point. They were willing to trade other players. They saw an opportunity. I mean, heck, tax-free situation. Mark Stone, now Pietrangelo. It seems like that they're able to attract free agents because it's Las Vegas. I mean, who doesn't want to go out and play there, right?
Right.
So,
absolutely.
So Brian Hedger has been joining us here. We're going to leave him with one final question before we let him go for the night here.
And I'll make it short because I know we're running over on our good 30 minutes here.
It's been good 40 minutes, which is just awesome.
It's a good 30 plus an overtime, and that fits the Blue Jackets pretty well.
So we're going to go to the shootout now. And
yeah, there you go.
How hot is Stan Bowman's seat in your mind now? Do you see the way that they're going, the possible rebuild? They've fired Quenneville. Jeremy Colleton's there. Not sure if they go and fire another coach. What do you see with Stan Bowman?
So I have no idea. And I'm going to say that because I've been wondering this for the last 3 years, to be honest with you. I actually started sort of wondering that after the 16-17 season that I talked about, when they had the fall on your face, get swept by the Predators in 4 straight after having such a great record and a great regular season. I thought for then I was like, okay, if they have a knee jerk, they might just fire Stan, and they didn't. And they let him kind of try and work things out. And then, to be honest, the last was 17, 18, 18, 19, and this past season. I think it started in 18, 19, and this past season. So the past 2 years, I actually started to hear some rumblings that potentially Chicago was kicking the tires and checking around with certain potential candidates who were going to be GM candidates. And I don't even know if Stan knows that. I mean, there was there was some definite smoke out there that was legitimately coming from. It may have been a small fire, but it was a fire nonetheless, smoking, and because it was coming out there, and then it just kind of went away a little bit. Couple of the people I thought might go there got other jobs, potentially, that kind of thing. So that kind of got taken away. But is that still there? It might be. I mean, like, you laid it out perfectly. He has made a lot of moves. He's fired a legendary coach. He's replaced him with a guy who's young and was unproven, and that guy has not gotten him to the playoffs yet. It appears they're going through a rebuild, so it wouldn't surprise me. Put it that way. If they do make a move, it wouldn't surprise me. But he is also it's like a game of Survivor, and like he's still there, and other people are not, right? So I look
it's
at
always
that
about ownership too,
Yes.
And
his dad probably has a little, maybe have a little say to that. I mean, I'm not saying he's got his job because of his dad, but I know that the Blackhawks, and rightfully so, put a lot of stock in what Scotty says, because Scotty is the greatest coach and who's basically ever been around in the NHL. So why wouldn't you listen to him, right?
Exactly right. That's well put. And Brian, we can't thank you enough for taking overtime plus here to join us tonight. Great. And fans, make sure you follow him at Brian Hedger, works for the Columbus Dispatch, does a great job covering the Blue Jackets. Brian, thank you for your time tonight. We really appreciate it.
All right. Thanks for having me on, Mark. I hope I didn't blind anybody with my head over here, but
and hope to see you at Nationwide Arena soon.
Yeah. Yes. From your lips to, well, the rest of that thing.
Do all that stuff, right?
Let's just hope it happens.
Absolutely. Thanks, Brian.
All right. See you later, Mark.
All right. That was Brian Hedger from the Columbus Dispatch joining us. And